thanks to Database USA for sponsoring the break, and I'm going to invite Mike back up for their next panel, which is all about conversational commerce, messaging, and all that. So Mike will explain further.
Yep, thanks, Charlie. I think we got to figure out some sort of drinking game to do around all of those words. Why don't you guys come on up? Hopefully me kind of talking will bring more people into the room. So we're here now to talk about messaging apps and chat bots, or kind of what's all kind of converging to be what we call, and what a lot of people in the industry are calling, conversational commerce. So how many people know that term, conversational commerce? So a lot of you have heard of it. It's very much a kind of maybe one of the buzzwords we'll see on the next iteration of those jargon videos. So anyway, I'll kind of, to tee us up, kind of give a primer on what this is. So it really starts with messaging apps. And if we kind of pan back a bit, messaging apps are exploding in usage right now, especially among kind of buying empowered millennials, as we're going to talk about, and we'll give some numbers. But this goes back to the fact that SMS and carrier fees, they've kind of gotten greedy with really exorbitant fees. So particularly in a lot of overseas market, but also in the US, it's really spawned this proliferation of messaging apps. And they're wildly popular. So Facebook Messenger has almost 1 billion global users. Kik, who we have here today, has about 300 million downloads. That's equivalent to the population of the United States. Millennials are increasingly using these. Now what's happening though is in addition to using these for a social context and messaging between friends, they're starting to be transitioned into a tool to message directly to businesses. And that's anything from talking about hours of operations or product information, or even going further with things like actually transacting, buying something, reserving something, booking service. This is where Ping Up shines. We're going to hear from Ron about that. But one of the kind of knee-jerk reactions to that is often like, what businesses, especially small businesses, are going to sit around and kind of text their customers all day. And that's where chatbots come in. So chatbots, feeding off of the advancements in artificial intelligence and speech-to-text processing, are really coming along to automate a lot of these kind of customer queries. So it becomes more tenable for the business to kind of answer all these. And that really is resonating for a lot of reasons we're going to go into. Culturally speaking, technologically speaking, it's kind of making a more direct path using conversation as opposed to the relatively convoluted kind of search paradigm that we spent some time yesterday talking about. Now, like a lot of other things, this is starting at the brand level. Brands like Sephora have a great integration with Kik, where brands are doing things like messaging customers about e-commerce orders and updates and things like that. So it's really starting at that level. We believe it's going to move down into the small business marketplace. It actually already is to some degree when you look at the efforts of companies like Ping Up. And really the advantage is, one thing we're going to go into is, culturally speaking and technologically speaking, we're talking about a very big backlash to apps. Apps can be this very kind of bloated, overkill situation for some of the functionality we need. So in these kind of conversational commerce and chatbot kind of scenarios, what we're talking about is, instead of having a separate app for all of the different businesses that you transact with, say it's like American Airlines and Chipotle and all these things, instead of having all this screen real estate devoted to all these apps, which again in a lot of cases is overkill. You got to do the download, the sign up, enter your credit card. Instead, housed within one kind of messaging app, whether it be Kik or Facebook Messenger, all of those businesses are simply contacts within your contact list. And again, you're conversing with kind of natural language. So for a lot of those reasons, and many more we're going to go into, this is really starting to resonate, and we believe has a lot of legs to it, both for brands and for small businesses. So like I said, it's starting more at the brand level, moving down market. We're going to talk about how that's going to come out. These guys are at different parts of that kind of value chain and doing some very interesting things. So we're going to discuss and also give some demos of how this actually looks. So why don't we get right into it? So why don't I have you guys introduce yourselves first, and then we'll go into kind of what you're doing. But first, just kind of high level about yourselves and your company. So first, Sergio, go ahead.
Okay, so my name's Sergio Silva. I'm the head of strategy and partnerships at Kik. And if people don't know Kik, Kik is the most popular app for US millennials. It's a messaging app. We've got 300 million users, and 40% of US teens are already using Kik.
My name is Ron Braunfeld. I'm with PingUp. I'm Vice President of Business Development. I've been in local space since 2002, MapQuest, Where, and now I'm with PingUp. PingUp is an API that sits in the middle between merchants and their scheduling platform and their food ordering platforms and the audience platforms, the publishers like YP, Yahoo, Dex Media, and City Search. We enable a native booking. We power the booking button on those publishers' sites. So when you press the booking button or the food ordering button, it goes right into the back end scheduling or ordering system for the business to create a native experience for the publisher.
Thanks, Ron. So before we get into kind of the commerce aspects of the discussion and how that's playing out, first, the baseline of this opportunity are some of the data points that you already kind of gave us, Sergio. But to back up my claim earlier that these things are growing in popularity so much, any other kind of metrics that you want to have about your usage or like engagement levels, or that this is really a baseline of an addressable market that is pretty large?
Yeah, I think to answer that, if you look at chat is following the same trends as in Asia. So if you look at WeChat in China and Line in Japan, you've seen that these companies have built massive audiences. And they've built products, robust ecosystems of products and services. So if you look at WeChat, you can watch a video, order a taxi, and also, apply for a loan within chat. Yep. We're doing the same thing at Kik. We're building robust services within a chat ecosystem and products, but really skewed toward US teens.
Yep.
So with that in mind, what we're trying to do is we've got this vision of connecting the world through chat, where you can watch a video, order a Sephora makeup kit, and also eventually order, go get your Uber online as well.
Now, I'm glad you brought up WeChat, because I think they're one of the leading indicators of what we could see stateside. In China, if you all aren't familiar, WeChat is essentially the internet. There are more kind of chat bots launched on a daily basis than there are websites on WeChat. So what is the psychological leap, and are we seeing that happen among millennials or even any age group between that transition I mentioned earlier of using these chat environments in a social, in a peer-to-peer context, to moving on to using it for commerce? Is that a large leap, or is that just happening naturally?
I think there's two things. I think with the China story, what's happened there is they missed social. They didn't go to Facebook. They went straight to mobile. So their UX or their UI, the way that they were conversing or the way that they were engaging with brands and people was all through chat.
Yeah.
The other thing as well, I think what's happened is when you look at apps, the trend now that you're seeing is that only 1/3 of users are downloading apps.
Yeah.
And if you look at that, 2/3 aren't.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? So I think the notion of chat apps are the new browsers and apps and bots are the new apps and websites is true today.
Yeah.
I'll just give a quick story. Last night I had to book a house for Sydney, for my summer in Sydney. And I downloaded Airbnb, took me 5 minutes, had to enter my credentials, then had to relearn the app and then execute and try and find a house. With chat apps, there's no user ID, you're already in the app. There's only one conversational UX. The UX that I'm using to converse with Airbnb would be the same as I'm conversing with Sephora or with the bot that Ron has created with PingUp. So there's no download, no sign up, and there's only one single interface that you have to learn, and that's across all bots.
Yeah.
So a lot of friction has been removed from all of what you see today with apps.
I like the kind of the soundbite of language is the new interface. If we talk about what we've seen in search, and I talked about this yesterday, I don't mean to sound repetitive, but search in a desktop paradigm has become somewhat convoluted, where we're trained to enter a search term and then drill down into what I call information about information, which is all those links, and then subdirectories and listings, and then reviews, and so we're seeing things like buy buttons, and I put this trend along the same lines. It's more of a direct path. to a transaction or to a conversation. But the other reason I bring that up is that in search, we've been taught almost to kind of communicate in this like Boolean logic type of way as opposed to just the natural way that humans talk. So talk about that, either of you, in this trend growing because the interface is just natural language. It's simpler and people can do it in a frictionless way.
Well, I think that if you go back, bots are really nothing extraordinarily new, quite honestly.
AOL has had this for years.
I remember when I was at MapQuest at AOL, you could basically go into AOL Instant Messenger, put in pizza plus your zip code. It would hit the YP database of advertisers, and the top 5 listings would pop up, and it would put the address and phone number. And that's where it stopped. And that was probably around the early 2000s when that happened. What's happening with bots right now is you're able to take it to the next step and actually make a transaction, order food, book an appointment. You know, it's a next step that is a logical step.
Yep.
History has a tendency of repeating itself. It's just taking it to the next transaction.
So that's a good segue into now talking about bots. So we covered the growth of messaging apps as really the baseline addressable market, how they're now being used for commerce, and now to make it even more tenable for both users and also for businesses, is, you know, for the response, to automate that with this kind of AI and what we're calling chatbots. So Ron, thanks for teeing that up, and this would be a good time to actually show the audience what we mean in an illustration. So if we want to roll that loop of what this actually looks like from a consumer perspective, and Ron, you can kind of talk through it as it's playing.
So here is the consumer can take a picture of a QR code that goes directly to the business, and right then and there, the consumer has the ability to choose a service, a date and time for the service, picking a time. And what's really interesting here, the Kik platform actually holds all the consumer information, name, email address, and phone number, and confirms the booking. This is the booking software that powers that booking. That happens to be Booker. The business didn't have to do anything. The report that business will get will be Ron Braunfeld booked XYZ appointment through Kik, and it just lands in the scheduling software that the business uses. It's that simple.
So let's talk about the different use cases. I think in early days, the current state of the art of AI and speech processing is, and the deployments we're seeing so far are largely kind of structured or binary, you know, picking a time, picking an appointment, stuff like that. Where do we believe this is going in terms of more, I guess, unstructured or complicated queries? Because for the time being, we're still going to probably have call centers and humans kind of handling lots of those, I guess, higher end queries where there'll be maybe a handoff from a chatbot to that higher end query. But kind of where are we now in terms of the use cases we're seeing most often?
I think, chime in too, please. I mean, I look at my kids. My kids are 15, 13, and 11. They don't want to make phone calls. I think all of us prefer not to make phone calls when we don't have to. We think that the millennials coming up not only want to buy, they want to buy services in the manner in which they've purchased products online for years, right? They don't care. They go to Amazon. They don't really care who fulfills the order, if it's warehoused at Amazon or a third party. They just want the order. For services, consumers want to be able to buy services in that manner. They don't care who's cutting their hair or who's providing XYZ service type of product. They want to be able to get it when they want it, how they want it. They're living in the real time.
So Sergio, in terms of use cases, one thing that you guys have done, which I think is very interesting, I almost liken it back to when the iPhone first came out, and people always forget this, but the first year of the iPhone, there were essentially 8 apps, which were the ones that came with it. And then when they opened the App Store, the SDK, then we saw a blooming of innovation. So you guys are doing similar in a chatbot environment where you're creating the SDK and a bot store to rely on that third-party innovation. So what are well, first tell us about that, and then I want to hear about what are some of the cool kind of mashups or creations you've seen created so far.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so going to tell you a story that Ted Livingston, our CEO, used the other day at a recent meeting. If you think about how the role of a developer, you think about when websites first came, when first were being built, we started off with text. Then the platform started to build more tools for developers to create richer experiences. The same is happening today. At Kik, we've been in this game for over 2 years, probably the most advanced of any other platform. So we've got a whole bunch of sophisticated tools that developers can now use, where we started off with images, video, then web links within a chat environment, and now, as you've seen with the ping up example, we've got a lot of sophisticated tool sets in the back end that can create a whole bunch of different orchestrations, which means that developers play a big role in enriching this ecosystem, and with Kik, they're able to build the best and first bots on Kik, as opposed to some of the other platforms. So since we launched the API, a couple of months ago, as you've mentioned before, we've had over 6,000 bots being built on Kik, which is huge. And so now what we've done, like the App Store, we've built a bot shop, which allows users, developers, brands, and publishers to be able to allow users to discover these bots. And some of the cooler bots that we have are things like the Zombie Game, which the engagement through that is huge. We've got also H&M, Sephora, a lot of the publishers are coming on. So it's early days, and so we think that there's opportunity for early adopters in this space, where we work with guys like PingUp and Sephora to provide inspiration to the marketplace, but also allows small businesses to actually take advantage of that inspiration and become early adopters in this space and leapfrog some of the big brands.
Let's talk about some of those integrations. I want to hear about the Sephora one in a practical sense, but first, what is the zombie one? Is it kind of a command interface and run? Like how are you iterating the game? What's the input?
So the input is it's to choose your own adventure.
Okay. Oh, nice.
So what happens is you, like the old, if anyone has had those choose your own adventure books, we replicated those. But what it does as well is, because we're based on HTML5, you can also launch a web browser within the app. So then you choose your own adventure, then you start killing zombies within a website, and then you go back into chat once you've completed it. So the point here is that you can combine, like Sephora, they combine a chat UX with a web page linked for additional information or additional input.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up too, because that makes it, I think there's sometimes a knee-jerk reaction to all of this, that it's almost like this ironic retro, like we're going back to the DOS command line prompt. But it's not that, because it's really just a different front end to then launch experiences that might be more graphically rich, whether that be launching to a website. So it's really just a reimagined front end in a lot of cases.
That's right. And it's a single front end that users don't have to relearn. So it's actually I think one of the tricks or one of the best practices is, one of the advantages of this is that you're having a one-to-one dialogue with a person. It's unique. And so it's almost like the holy grail of personalization. You can actually, with all the inputs, all the data inputs that are coming in from that user, you can personalize every single experience for that particular user. So if all three of us are engaging with Sephora, with buying presents for our wives, all these experiences were completely different and unique. And the bot starts to learn the behaviors of all the interactions that you have with the bot, and start to personalize even more and fine-tune the recommendations throughout the whole engagement process.
Sure. So before I go on, I'll prompt the audience if they have any questions. Twitter or raise your hand. Charlie, are we able to get a mic to people if they need it? And just as we go, raise your hand and Charlie will see, and we'll go from there. So that's interesting, and there are a lot of probably usual suspect use cases in e-commerce, being able to order something, check on the status, and that's probably some of the Sephora integration. Where else are you guys seeing this shine? And Ron, adding to that, as this moves down market, it probably has a lot of more obvious applications or use cases when we're talking about booking appointments. Where do you guys see this going next, both local or with larger brands?
I think it's still really early. It's really early. But at the end of the day, the amount of time the millennials are spending within these chat applications are not measured in unique monthly visitors. It's measured in, hours per week, sometimes hours per day. And the reason why you're seeing brands wanting to get involved onto these platforms is because they have to get in front of these consumers, right? From a small business perspective, small business consumers want to deal with small businesses. They want to connect with the community around them. So it makes sense to enable that, whether it's ordering food, booking an appointment, or engaging with the community around them. It has to happen.
Yeah.
And not only that, from a local perspective, the millennials, there's no brand out there who I believe the millennials associate with from a local paradigm. I ask my kids this: who do you trust to help guide you in local? They don't have one.
That's interesting. Well, another point to all of this is that from a brand perspective or from a local business perspective, it's probably going to require a different way of thinking and how they're getting in front of users, because now they are a contact within someone's messenger app, as opposed to over the last few years, the idea in their head of that kind of marketing, that kind of getting in front of someone, is to have an app on someone's home screen. But as Sergio, as you point out, you're kind of behind the 8 ball to begin with when 2/3 of users aren't even downloading them to begin with. So what's the value proposition for brands? I think we've talked a lot about from the user perspective, but is this going to be kind of a learning curve for them to now be present in this kind of different manner than what they're used to? It's not search, it's not apps, it's they're present through this separate interface.
Yeah, I think if we take the WeChat example, and if we believe that the US will take that a form of that environment or that ecosystem, then we can start to look at how will brands then start integrated into a chat environment. Well, if you look at chat apps, they're distribution points.
Yep.
And you'll have a chat app within Kik for distributing content or connecting to users that are teen and millennial focused. Then you'll also probably, if you want to attract the older demographic, you'll go to Facebook Messenger, and then so on and so on. And if you want to make a play internationally, you'll go to Line in Japan and WeChat in China. So what's happening now is that you're building, brands and publishers are building one bot platform that serves many demographics and many platforms.
Sure.
And I think if you look at the WeChat model, they use Kik codes to follow different brands. So everyone connects to brands via a Kik code or via a code, their own WeChat code. Unlike the ones that we had here, and as you've seen in the demo before, earlier, you can start to see the use cases starting to develop. I go into a restaurant, I scan the code, to order my food. I go into a dry cleaning service, I scan the code to follow and be updated when it's ready. So there's so many different use cases that I think it is early, but again, if you follow the WeChat model, they use chat for everything.
Yeah, I think that this discussion gets a lot of skepticism out there, but I think if there are some really strong leading indicators to point to, it's what's happening in China with WeChat, also what's happening with millennials, which essentially are the next kind of, they're going to decide what the interfaces are. So those are two very strong ones. But a third one that a lot of people don't talk about is that the kind of alternate UI that we're starting to see develop are kind of IoT integrations and voice-based things such as, Amazon Alexa in the home or Siri, and those also kind of get some skepticism. But as the speech-to-text processing improves, those interfaces, which are going to be kind of a large touch point in the future, are very much conducive to what we're talking about here, because it's natural language, but it's spoken instead of typing. But still, it sounds like everything you guys are building can easily integrate into those voice-based interfaces, right?
That's right. It's just a signal. It's just a signal that what happened is the bot starts to orchestrate a whole bunch of different tasks. Mm-hmm. And essentially that's what a bot is. It starts to receive input, whether it be what you shown earlier, these buttons or smart buttons, which are we call suggested responses, or whether it's a voice command, will then start to orchestrate. I could easily overlay a voice command in the Sephora bot and start to then tell the bot what to do.
But it's a more structured approach.
Yeah.
Right.
And the speech-to-text processing is not there yet, but it's an iterative type of technology where all of this additional usage will accelerate the advancement of that underlying technology. But in the meantime, I'm convinced this is going to be like the new damn you autocorrect when these types of like spoken commands are used and combined with commerce. It's like, no, I didn't want to order that, whatever kind of insert fill in the blank. So yeah, I think that underlying technology, as that advances, it's only going to kind of advance this entire cause.
Going back to the kick codes or just the codes in general, I was at a baseball game this past weekend with my son, and we were in a section where we could actually order food to our seats. And what happened was you had to open up an app, make sure you had a beacon, connect with the beacon, and then tell them where you were, and then order the food. And I was lost at that point. At that point in time, I was just like, I wish there was a code on my seat where I could scan it that goes right into the menu and knew exactly where I was. That would have been a better experience for me at that game.
Less taps for sure. Yeah. So Charlie, if there aren't any questions, so what I want to do is, we've positioned this entire conference to be all about tactics. What are some of the things that you guys are seeing in terms of cautionary tales or best practices in either the third-party developers that are building apps, what's working, what's not working, what you think is coming, or Ron, in terms of the publishers and the local folks that might start to integrate this and are at step one? What are the types of things they should be thinking about if they're going to be integrating this conversational commerce in an existing bundle of services they're offering to local businesses?
From my perspective in the local, like I said earlier, there's a chance for either an existing brand or new brand to really engage with the millennials and teens in a way that no current brand is currently doing that. Whether it's an existing brand or a new brand, from PingUp's perspective, we're just an API that powers the technology. We don't really care which brand. We just want to be there to power that brand's capability. We have a lot of years of experience with this so far.
Now, is your thought too that like some of the local publishers, whether it be a YP, whether it be someone like Yelp, to essentially have their own chatbot functionality resident in that experience so they maintain ownership of the customer? Or is it more about helping them kind of be a channel to small businesses to work with a more broadly defined and larger play like Kik? Or both?
It could be both.
Yeah.
It's.
Now, are you, I don't remember, are you at liberty to talk about any of the companies in local that you're working with now? Any kind of naming names and kind of who's doing what?
Yeah, I mean, we're in conversations with everybody. We're published with not on chat or messaging platforms yet, but we're working with YP, City Search, Super Media. We're in the process of launching Yahoo, which could be live today or tomorrow. And we have another big publisher that's launching in 2 or 3 weeks, and we're engaged with everybody.
Cool. Sergio, any kind of best practices or what you're seeing out there? Any learnings?
Yeah, I think the main fundamental shift well, not fundamental shift, but the main notion that I sort of want to get across, when you think about bots, there's sort of there's a graph that I do that's utility versus entertainment. Mm-hmm. So you either sit in the top left, utility, or at the bottom, entertainment, or you can try and move toward the top right, which is a bit of both entertainment and utility.
Is the zombie game on the utility end?
No, no, it's actually completely to the bottom right.
Just kidding, go ahead.
And so when you think about that, then you think about bots as friends. You're creating a conversation with someone. It's almost like dating. Mm-hmm. Don't feed them content, try and sell them first. Yep. Try and then get some data. Like with the Sephora bot, it goes through a quiz first. And what that does, it starts to grab that data to start to personalize any product recommendations. Then you start to think about, when you're talking or creating a bot as a friend, then think about what chat service do you want to then build. Yep. What chat service do you want to build on Kik, on Facebook Messenger, and some of the other platforms that then, drive some of the business objectives that you're trying to achieve with your business.
Sure. And speaking of business objectives, something you said, Ron, reminded me of a key principle in what we're calling the local commerce universe, where the overall discussion is no longer just about advertising and marketing and customer acquisition, but about helping businesses on more operational levels, customer service, CRM. It seems like this entire discussion almost exists more on that side of the spectrum than it does about marketing and customer acquisition. Okay, and you guys are specializing in that very function, which is helping businesses with their scheduling systems. So this entire discussion of chatbots and messaging, to what degree does this tie into stuff like that back-end stuff that can really help?
100%.
Nice.
100%. I mean, we're basically, a merchant has purchased a scheduling platform to help automate and run their business. All we're doing, which is it can be pretty complicated, is extending that scheduling service to publishers so that we power that booking button. So when the consumer presses that booking button, it goes into their back-end system.
Nice.
And chatbots are an extension of that capability. We're helping the scheduling software companies extend their reach and getting that booking button or buy button in front of the consumer everywhere it can be.
Well, that also brings up another important point. With any emerging technology, there's a fear of disruption, a fear of displacing all these other things. In a lot of ways, this almost increases the amount of activity that are happening on existing e-commerce platforms or feeding into existing CRM systems or new customer acquisition. It's almost like it's more of that, and it supports current ecosystems rather than disrupts them.
Yeah, I think it's transferring ecosystems into a new UI, but
Yep.
then still maintaining the back-end system. So it's really, so what you're doing is you're transferring the behavior or the way that you communicate. And like the Sephora bot, we're still using their,
Sure.
their e-commerce engine to actually drive some of those transactions.
Sure, but in an e-commerce context, we're talking about probably a net effect of more orders because it's more touch points.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So before we go to kind of final words, I'll signal Donnie if you're kind of near the front. Oh, there you are. Be ready to kind of come up soon. And I'll give the audience one last chance for any questions they may have. Charlie, any Twitter questions? Any hands? Cool. So I will tee you guys up for kind of any final words that you think you didn't get to talk about yet, or just kind of parting advice for this audience that might be at early stages of, or not even early stages, what they should be thinking of in the next few years if they're at all interested in this phenomenon.
I think the important thing to note is we've gone through social, now chatbots are here. It's another, I feel some sort of anxiety that now we've got to do something else now we've got bots to consider. Well, if you think about bots, they're actually much easier to build than apps,
Yep.
to be frank.
Yeah.
And creating work with partners like PingUp and Sephora, we've created a lot of inspiration in the marketplace, which means that there's opportunity there for everyone else to take advantage of. It's early days, so the people that, I'd love to see small businesses take on the big guys and disrupt them.
Yeah.
Because now is the opportunity. 2016 for us is the year of the bot.
Ron, before you go, one point to add to that is that what I mentioned earlier about the friction points of having, all of these different apps on your home screen for your American Airlines and your Chipotle and all that, that kind of fragmentation challenge is even more pronounced with local businesses where you transact with many more of them and they're smaller. So you're not going to have an app for every florist and plumber and Sal's Pizza from yesterday and all of these things, where the need for that because of that fragmentation even more so compels having them all in one place as we're proposing here today.
That's right. And look, and there's with anything that with new technologies, there's always opportunity.
Yep. Ron, you get the last word.
I would say if there's interest, it's really easy to build. Now's the time to test, fail fast, and keep on trying. These guys are great to work with. They provide really great guidance, and you're going to find that not just with one messaging platform, but all of them. Our bot platform can be used on any platform. It's synonymous to a website that we build our bot platform that's interchangeable with Kik, Facebook Messenger, everybody. It's pretty fun to see it happen. So test, measure, fail, and then do it again.
Yeah, and in terms of experimenting and failing fast, one other thing I'll say is instead of just kind of talking about and reading about this discussion in the abstract, which I guess I'm guilty of what we're doing today, download Kick, play with it, see what some of the third-party developers have done from that, and learn from it. Become a kind of consumer. Put yourselves in the shoes of a millennial and play around with it. I think that'll give you a good idea about all the things we're talking about here today. So please join me in thanking the panel. Donnie, if you want to come on up.